This is the MTN 10 o'clock news.
Good evening and thanks for joining us on this Wednesday night. I'm Russ Riesinger. Straight ahead at 10, a field of dreams is now reality as a large group of supporters breaks ground for Landon's Legacy Miracle Field. Plus, how lessons learned from the struggles of some of today's top athletes can help save lives in our own homes. And from mass to COVID cases to virtual learning, we'll catch up with the Billings School Superintendent to see how the first few weeks have gone. But we begin with House Bill 702, passed earlier this year by the Montana legislature. That bill, which covers a variety of vaccine requirements, has caused confusion for many county health departments. Tonight we're learning it's also had some unintended consequences that state legislators didn't see coming. MTN's David J. has the story.
In some places around the country, people can be excluded from events, employment, and buildings for not taking the COVID-19 vaccine. House Bill 702 prohibits discriminating against those who have not been vaccinated. We talked with one legislator about the law and the unintended consequences.
We listen to constituents, lobbyists, everybody on what could be some unintended consequences if this bill makes it through. But there's a lot of bills that come out that have unintended consequences.
Representative Barry Usher of Billings talks about House Bill 702. Yellowstone County Health Officer John Felton says it's a potential conflict between the law and the expectations and requirements of public health.
People who are unvaccinated and a close contact, CDC says they should quarantine. If we can't treat people differently based on their vaccination status under House Bill 702, then public health is put in the position of, do we follow the science and do what CDC says, or do we not?
CDC guidelines are not law, so we can't anticipate what CDC guidelines will be at the time of passing the bill or any time in the future.
Felton says the law causes a concern because it applies to more than COVID vaccines.
Healthcare organizations have required hepatitis and MMR vaccines for years and years and years. A number of places require influenza vaccine, like we do, but at this point we can't do any of those.
Before COVID even came around, this bill was already written because there were people that were being discriminated against.
Representative Tom Jacobson of Great Falls was the only Democrat voting for the bill and told the Montana Free Press in retrospect he's not sure he would have changed his vote. Representative Geraldine Custer of Forsyth, who voted yes, told the Free Press in hindsight, I probably would have voted no.
It's one of the biggest bills that we passed this session, and it's really about freedom of choice and liberty and rights.
In Billings, David J., MTN News.
Felton also says that healthcare organizations can't require staff to be vaccinated, often making it difficult to assure patients. However, Usher did say that the law does not prohibit patients from asking that question. Well, COVID-19 numbers are already adding up after the first week of Billings Public School. School District 2 reports a total of 61 positive COVID-19 cases last week. Here's a breakdown. 16 elementary students, 15 middle school, and 18 high school students for a total of 49 COVID-19 positive students. Added to that, 9 elementary, 1 middle school, and 2 high school staff members across the city, totaling 12 adults.
According to new COVID-19 data, wrapping up last week for Yellowstone County, the virus continues to circulate and increase in numbers, particularly infecting school-aged children aged 0 to 19. In the week ending August 28th, school-age kids accounted for 21% of the county's 676 new cases. Billings students and teachers are now in their second week of school, with masks required to be worn inside school buildings. The Billings schools have reported 49 total COVID cases in students and 12 cases in staff since the start of the year. Billings School Superintendent Greg Upham said this year's total is already nearing a high of 71 cases recorded in the fall of last year.
I mean, it's doing what we anticipated it would do, which is, one of the reasons that we wanted to mask early. We're going to watch it. The case counts, school-age case counts are rising rapidly. It's concerning, and we'll do the precautionary measures that we've always taken and do the right thing. We'll just continue to just work with this virus and do our best with it.
The question of whether face masks should be required or optional in schools has drawn out differing opinions across the state, with Governor Greg Gianforte and the state health department issuing a rule on Tuesday, encouraging school districts to consider public comment before making masking decisions. Upham said the Billings schools will continue to require masks until case numbers drop.
Information from DPHHS said should, and so we didn't see it as a mandate. And so we'll definitely take those considerations, those items under consideration that were shared in that information, and we'll continue with our mask requirements until the numbers come down.
The rule, in effect for 120 days, also noted students should be able to opt out of health mandates due to moral convictions, religious reasons, or mental or physical health-related reasons. Upham said the Billings schools are offering virtual learning to students who wish not to wear a mask. About 71 students so far have enrolled in that virtual learning. Over the start of school, Upham said only a handful of students have refused to wear their masks in class. The deadline to get signed up for virtual learning is September 3rd. Last week, 3 Billings school staff members were placed on 5 days of unpaid leave for refusing to wear a mask. Upham said on Wednesday that 2 of the staff members have returned to work and 1 has resigned. In Billings, Mitch Schlage, MTN News.
We checked in with Yellowstone County health officials who showed us the data. At the beginning of the 2020 school year, people under 19 made up 12% of all the new positive COVID cases. At the same time this year, that number is 21%. Also tonight, Crow Tribal Chairman Frank Whiteclay has reinstated a mask mandate inside all public buildings, including schools on the reservation. In national news, the Biden administration says it will use diplomatic and economic pressure to make sure the Taliban lives up to its word and allows the 100 to 200 Americans still in Afghanistan to leave.
We are focused on operationally moving forward on a number of fronts.
This was a botched job of gargantuan proportions.
Military leaders are expressing gratitude and support for the more than 800,000 troops who served over the past 2 decades, including the 2,461 who paid the ultimate price. A hellish scene outside South Lake Tahoe's Heavenly Mountain Ski Resort as fire crews work to save it from fast-moving flames. The resort snow machines are running full blast, spraying water. The Caldor fire has burned 325 square miles and has now destroyed about 700 structures and threatens at least 30,000 more.
And we're seeing fire behavior that most could agree with me we may never see again in our whole lives. Let's hope.
And what's left of the former hurricane known as Ida, still creating flooding problems on the eastern seaboard tonight. The storm left behind lots of damage down south and some sights like this, a cow stuck in a tree days after the hurricane. Rescuers were able to get it down, and it's said to be doing fine. We're joined now by Chief Meteorologist Ed McIntosh, and the beginning of fall weather season may make some people shed a tear or two, but not for the reasons you might think.
That's right. As we start getting into fall allergy season, and you can see by the red shaded area that areas of central and western and Montana could be actually in the high category for this year. A couple of things come together. Still enough moisture around despite the drought and warmer than average temperatures that we could really start to see a lot of things in bloom, particularly ragweed. It could be one of the worst hazards this time of the year, and about 1 in 15 Americans suffer from seasonal allergies. But sneezing, runny nose, congestion, itchy throat, irritated eyes, that sounds a lot like the conditions from both wildfire smoke and COVID-19, and that could cause some additional stress. We'll talk about the weekend forecast coming up in just a little bit.
More and more, we see the world's most successful and accomplished athletes openly revealing stresses of mental health. Simone Biles at the recent Olympics, tennis player Naomi Osaka, and many more. But the stresses are also very real right here at the grassroots level in our own schools. Q2's Scott Breen is taking a closer look tonight.
Some are more hesitant to seek help. There's something there. There's definitely stigma.
Danny Dessen grew up not far from Rocky Mountain College, actively involved in sports. Now he has a master's degree in sports psychology, and he's tracking a doctorate.
We've used mental toughness in describing athletes for a long time without much explanation on how they develop the mental toughness. It doesn't happen because they're zapped with the right genetics all the time. There's people working with them in the background, and it is definitely the background.
In short, we all struggle at times. We just don't necessarily show it to the world, or even to our closest friends or parents. Might be the nervous depression of a new school year, or the anxiety of a fresh sports season among middle and high school-aged kids. This is a recent Saturday morning in Laurel, with several hundred turning out in support of Sam's Run. Sam Melling was an 8th grader who loved running cross country before taking his own life 6 years ago this November. His cross country teammates asked then to honor him with a memorial run. His family, humbled, collaborated to turn that idea into an awareness run.
The average onset is 14 years old for a mental health condition. So those are our kids. Those are those kids in middle school and in high school.
Sam's run is part of an outreach compelling kids, friends, and parents to notice different triggers for slumping mental health.
That's what we saw with Sam. He had a couple of concussions just back to back, and then his personality changed, and that was right before he died.
Natural anxiety and depression, even without concussions, are hard to spot in young people. And the more physical the sport, like football, the easier it is to often overlook. A message not lost on coaches.
Mental health is kind of that silent illness that people do a really good job of making sure that everybody knows that they're okay when really they're not okay.
I gave a stat that said almost 15% of kids in 7th and 8th grade attempted suicide in 2019 in Montana. Those are staggering numbers to me.
There's ups and downs. We've got injuries and kids aren't playing as much as they want to, and we lose football games. It's all about trying to find a way to motivate and lift people up when they're not feeling very good.
The anxiety of performance and having different people in the stands, the triggers are different for every single athlete.
Because things like starting back to school and some of those other triggers can really exacerbate some of those illnesses.
It exists, it's just whether we can translate that into working with 10-year-old kids all the way up to, the college athletes back here.
It's no secret that today's social media, sports-related or not, intensifies expectations and anxiety for kids trying to perform or even just fit in.
And then they watch the responses and the expectations of people that are not involved in what they do, and that's difficult for them. Staying away to whatever degree you can would be my advice.
And one of Desson's strongest tips is also one of his simplest. Sort out thoughts in a 25-cent journal.
Thoughts being put on paper, it's a good way to process things. Thoughts floating around in our head, we generally pick up on the negative stuff and we dwell on it.
Scott Breen reporting. Again, September marks National Suicide Prevention Month. This month, Q2 will bring you information and stories surrounding suicide prevention, surviving suicide, how you can get help for yourself or someone you love. In the meantime, you can go to afsp.org/Montana, register for the Yellowstone Valley Walk to Fight Suicide, and join the Q2 team in our community on Sunday, September 19th, as we take steps to raise awareness. Still to come on the MTN 10 o'clock news here on Q2, the African swine flu raising concerns in the U.S. hog industry. We'll have the details coming up in tonight's Montana Ag Report.
Right after this.